Hi everyone, in this lecture we are going to go over the concepts of functions. So what is a function, why do we use it, and then how to use it. So first of all, the function is a block of statements that perform a specific task. Every time this function is called, then it does exactly the same thing over and over again. So let's start with an example. So let's say I want to welcome a student to class. So I'm going to say, for example, say out, hey, John, and then welcome to computer science class. Uh, John, I hope you have uh, a fun learning experience. Have a good day, John. So this statement, this welcoming statements is only for John. Now, what about if I have another student who came to class and I want to say the same thing to him or to her? Then I have to repeat the same thing. And that's where the function comes into play. So if I put all these statements in a function, the only thing that needs to change is the name of the student. Everything else will stay the same. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a function. So I'm going to go right here before the main function. And I'm going to create a function. I'm going to say void. I'm going to explain what void means. We have two types of function. There is a function that returns something, and then the void function does not return anything. So let's say this is the name of the function, welcome. And then here I'm going to put the parameter. Parameter is things that change. So for example, right here, I'm going to put string name. So when I put name, for example, John, then the statement will be about John. If I put name as Steve, the statement will be about Steve, and so on. Here I'm going to put the same thing that I just did, but I'm going to replace John with the variable name that keeps changing. So I'm going to put here the same thing. So I'm just going to copy it and paste it here. And every time I see John, so I'm going to replace it with name. Welcome to CS class. There is no John here, and then here John. So I'm going to replace this with the variable name. Okay. And finally, have a good day, John. The same thing right here. I'm going to close it and then replace this with name. All right. So now this is the function. Now, function by itself does not do anything. I have to call the function. And then in the main, I'm going to put welcome. This is how we call the function. We mentioned the name. And then inside the parentheses, we're going to put the argument. The argument is what is the value that's going to replace the variable name. So let's say, for example, here I'm going to put Steve. So now if I run the program, so basically the program C++ will go search, is there any function called welcome? We're going to say, oh, there is one right here, and it accepts, it takes a string as an argument, as a parameter. All right, so now if I run the program, so now as you can see, it says, hey, Steve, welcome to computer science class. Steve, I hope you have a fun learning experience. Have a good day, Steve. So now, if I want to welcome another student, so let me skip a line here and then call the method again. So there is no limit how many times I run, but this time I'm going to choose a different name. Let's say Maria. So I'm going to run the program. You're going to get the same thing. So it saves you a lot of time. Look, it's the same. So this is just 4 lines of code. But imagine the function has like 1,000 or even some situations in big programs. You may have function made of thousands and millions of lines of code. So it saves a lot of time. It's more efficient and it's practical. Okay, so we can repeat this over and over again. Okay, so that's basically what the function. Now let's go create another function to see how it works. So let's say I want to create a function that accepts a word or a phrase and then accepts also a number of times, an integer that tells me how many times I should repeat that string. So let me go right here and then type void. I'm going to call it many times. Then I accept 2 things, string, let's say a word, and then the number of times it will be repeated. So here I'm going to use the loop because I want to repeat this. And then I'm going to say from 1 all the way to num itself. So if num is 7, it will be 1 to 7, so that's 7 times and so on. And then I plus plus, so I'm going to put C out, and then whatever the word might be. Okay, that's it. This is how the function. Now, as I said, if I run the program, nothing will happen. Why? Because the function is just sitting there. It's not going to take effect until you call the function. And then when do we call the function? In the main. So I'm going to go right here and then do the same thing. Let me skip a line, switch out, and the line. So how do I call the method? By mentioning the name of the function. And then for every parameter here, you need to replace it with the actual value. So our word, for example, is computer. How many times? Let's say 4 times. Now if I run the program, so the program will search for a function called many times. It's going to find one, and it's going to ask you for 2 things. Give me the word and give me the number that should be, that this word will be repeated. So if I run the program, you're going to see that computer is repeated 4 times, as you can see right here. I can leave a space if I want to. So I can go here and then leave a space. Okay. So now if I run the program, you're going to see space between computers. Okay. Now I can call the same thing. I can call the method again. Maybe like skip a line again. And then instead of repeating computer, I'm going to repeat something else. Let's say a cat. And then I'm going to put, let's say, 5 times. So it's going to do the same thing. Run it, and then you're going to see cat. So whatever that string might be, it will be repeated number of times. Okay. Now, okay, I just mentioned that there are 2 types of function. There is the one that does not return anything, like a void. Usually, like it prints something or it performs specific task. But sometimes we may need a function that returns something, that gives us something back, like the result will give us the result or the outcome back. Let me give you an example. So let's say we have a function. All what it does, it just calculates the sum of 3 numbers, for example. B and C, all of them are integer or double if you want. So this function, it returns the sum of 3 numbers. So basically it says return anything. Now how do we know that it is a return? It doesn't say void. It will say integer. That means we are expecting an integer back, or we are expecting a string back, or expecting true or false back, or character, or whatever that might be. So here we are returning a number because if you add A, B, C, and they're all numbers, of course you're going to get another number. So this is a number. Now, if I call it, skip a line. So I'm going to print it, because when you return, it's going to return something, but it will not be printed or displayed until I put cout. So I'm going to put here sum, and then come up with three numbers, 10, 20, 30. So if you run the program will search for sum and then return whatever is in there. So run the program, it's going to return the sum, as you can see, which is 60. Okay, now let me create another one that returns the average of three numbers. I can keep it like ABC because these are local variables. So this ABC has nothing to do with the other ABC, but I can change it if you want to. I'm gonna put X, Y, Z. Right. Now there are two ways to do that. Either I'm going to start over calculating the total, because you cannot calculate the average unless you calculate the sum first. So I can put this return, or like let's say calculate the total. So let's say integer total equals X plus Y plus Z, and then return the total divided by 3.0 because the return is double. So that's one way. But there is a more efficient way. What about taking advantage of the sum that we already have? We already have a function that adds up three numbers. We don't have to add them up. So all of this is unnecessary. So I'm going to call the method or the function that I have earlier, which is sum, and then I'm just going to replace A, B, C with X, Y, Z, because that's the numbers we have. That's it. So now, we are putting like a function inside another function. So now if I go down, and then I put here, let's say the same thing, cout, we skip a line. Now if I want to calculate the average, I'm going to put average 10, 20, 30. So it's going to give me the average. So it's going to call the function sum. That's going to give you 60 divided by 3.0. So if you run the program, you are going to get the average, which is 20. 60 divided by 3. Okay? Now let's practice a return on another example. So now, instead of returning integer or double, let me return, for example, true or false, or bool. So if the return type is bool, that means the function has to return either true or false. For example, is even. So all what the function does, it takes a number, okay, a number, let's say n, and then tells you whether it is an even number or not. How do we know if the number is even? So we use the modulus, the remainder. So we're going to put n mod 2. If the remainder equals 0, then we're going to return 2. Always whatever you are returning should match with the return type. If this is bool, then whatever you're returning has to be either true or false. So I'm going to put else return false. Okay? And now if I call the function, if I go down, skip a line, and then let me call this function is even. So if I put, for example, 19, on 19, the remainder is 1. So it has to be false or 0, because 0 means false, and then true means 1. So if I run the program, you're going to see that it is 0 or false. See, sure enough, I have 0 here. That means it is false. So I can call this function with other numbers. All right. Now another example. Let's say back to void, and I'm going to factors or divisor. Let's call it divisor. This function, it takes a number, whatever number, I'm going to call it value, and then it will return all the divisors of that number. So for example, if the number is 6, it will not return, it will display all the divisors like 1, 2, 3. Well, it's up to you if you want to include the number itself or not. So these are the divisors, because when you divide 6 by any of these numbers, the remainder is 0. So first one, I have to use the loop. I'm going to start from 1 all the way to the number. But I'm not going to include the number. But if you want to include it, that's fine, because it's a divisor too. But I'm not going to include the number. And then I'm going to check if the value, which is the number we are testing, when you divide it by each value of I, if the remainder is 0, that means it's divisible, and that number should be displayed, should be printed. So I'm going to print I. Maybe like a little space. Okay. So now, again, this function, all what it does is just prints all the divisors. So now, if I want to print, I'm going to call the function divisors. And then let me use number 12. What are the divisors of 12? So we have 1, we have 2, we have 3, we have 4, and we have 6. Again, we are not including the number itself. So if you run the program, so as you can see, this is all the numbers. 0, 1. Okay, hold on. We need to make sure divisors. Let me see. I put 6 in here. I was supposed to put value, that whatever value, because I was thinking about 6, that's why. So it should be value. That means whatever the number we are testing. So that's why we got the wrong answer. So now look at the number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. I'm sorry, we start from 1 because that 0 is from the previous function. So I need to skip a line here. Okay, now we run it. We're going to see the divisors are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Okay, so that's basically how the function works. Let's add one more example. So let's say I'm going to create one that returns an integer that takes a string and then counts how many empty spaces. So let's say I want to count how many spaces, many spaces. So it takes a string, let's say sentence. And then I want to know how many empty spaces in that specific sentence. So I need the variable to count, right? I'm going to start from 0. And then I'm going to use the loop to check every single character of that sentence. Now remember that every string is index based. So the first character has index 0, the second character has index 1, and so on. So I'm going to go from index 0, which is basically the first character, all the way depending how long. That's why I'm going to use length. That means depending how long the sentence is, one character at a time, and then check if it matches the space. So I'm going to put here if sentence dot add. So add will return character at that specific index I. So for example, if I'm testing the first character, let's say it's A, well, sentence dot add 0, which is A, is not empty space, so it's not going to count. So if it is empty space, I'm going to put here space by using single quotes. If it is equal, then I'm going to increment count. That means count that specific space. And then I'm going to continue this because this is a loop over and over until, I'm sorry, it should be count. And then once you are done, make sure you are outside the loop and return count. Okay? So this, it just counts every character at I, at 0, at 1, at 2, depending how long the sentence is. So let me call this function. So I'm going to go here and then put cout, and then I'm going to put many spaces, and then come up with a sentence. It says C++ is a very interesting programming language. Just an example. How many spaces we have in here? So let me run the program and then I will check. So the program says that I have 6. I just have to skip the line. So if I run, it should tell me it says 6. Let's count, see if it is really a. I have one space right here. After C++, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that's correct. I have 6 spaces. So that's how the function. So I'm going to end with one more. Let's say I want to create a function that returns string. And this function is called reverse. It takes a string and then reverts it, basically backwards. So I'm going to put here word, okay? Then I'm going to return the reverse, the same word but backwards. So in this case, I need a new string. I'm going to call it rev. That's going to be empty space. So it has nothing. And then I will keep concatenating. I'm going to start from the end. Every time I concatenate one layer, until I finish the whole thing. So the loop will start from the end because I'm going backward. So I'm going to go word dot length -1 all the way, remember, backward until 0, and then minus minus, and then every time I will concatenate. So I'm going to put rev plus equal a word at I. Okay. So for example, if I'm calling this function reverse using the word computer, so what is the last letter? R. So it's going to be the first one to be concatenated because I started with nothing, with an empty string. So I'm going to put R, then E, then T, and so on until I get to C at the end. And then once I finish, then I will return the variable rev. That's going to give me the reverse. Now, let's say I want to test if a string is a palindrome. You know what palindrome is, right? Palindrome is when you read the same word backward and forward is the same, like a race car, like mom, like dad. So now I can create a function because I will take advantage of this reverse. I will compare the original string with the reverse. If it is the same, then it is a palindrome. If it's not, then it's not palindrome. So I'm going to put here bool because I want to check if it is palindrome. Is palindrome. So it takes a word, and then I will check. But I'm going to take advantage of this. I'm going to say if the original word is equal to the reverse. Now I'm going to call the function reverse. Reverse the word that I have using that function that we created earlier. If it's the same, like race car, reverse is race car also. So they are equal, they are the same. Then I'm going to put return true. Else, then return false. It's not a palindrome. Now let's call this function with examples just to test it. So I'm going to skip a line here. And then I'm going to put here, let's say, is palindrome. So let me put something that's not palindrome. Let's say computer. So computer is not a palindrome because when you reverse it, you don't get the same thing. So I'm going to run the program. It's going to say false or 0. As you can see, 0. Now let me use another one, race car. Race car is an example of a palindrome, so it should say 1 or 2, as you can see, showing up. Now there is one thing that I need to make sure that you understand is all these functions, if you notice, I put them on top, like on top of the main function. Do I have to? What happened if I put it at the bottom? So let's say the first one, okay? Let's say this many times right here. So if I copy this and I put it at the bottom, what should happen? So I'm gonna cut it and then I put it at the bottom. What's going to happen? That means if I put it below. Now, if I go to the main function, look what's gonna happen. You're gonna show that many, what is many? Many times if you run the program, see, it's going to cause an error. Why? Because the program did not recognize, because the function is way, way down, so it did not recognize it. Now, the answer is we can put it below the function, but we have to add one more thing. It's called prototype. That means on top, if you decide to put the function below the main function, that's okay. But make sure, like in our case, look at the function. The function is it's called many spaces. That means it accepts string and integer. So you have to put that header or signature, which is the header, put it on top. Only the header. Here, for example, right here, I'm going to go all the way up, and then I'm going to put the prototype, which is void, only the header. I'm going to put void, and then I'm going to put many times, which is the name of the function, and then just the data type of the parameters, which is string, comma, integer, and you put semicolon. This would solve the problem. That's like you are telling the program that we do have a function down there that accepts that has the name many times. It takes a string and integer. Here, we're not. If you run the program, you're not gonna have an error. It will be run successfully. Okay. So you have the choice. If you put the function on top, like above the main function, then that's fine. You don't have to do anything. But if you decide for whatever reason to put the function below the main function, you have to have this prototype. It's called the prototype. That means basically the header of the function, just like that. So for example, if let's give another example. Let's say the sum, for example, right here. I'm gonna put int sum, and then it takes string int, comma int. See? So now, if I put this function below the main function, I'm not gonna have a problem. I'm gonna go up all the way down and put it here. There is no issue. So if you run the program, there will be no problem. All right. So I hope you find this one useful. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. Thank you.